Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
And it's a Friday. It's October 10th. Great to be back with you live after our wonderful Wine and Shrine pilgrimage, which was a huge success and such a joy to travel with 35 other women who love the Lord and the church, and we're so excited to learn more about their faith through Italy and all the beautiful shrines and wonders. And our wonderful spiritual director, Father John Klockman from the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis, and of course my co-host and the foundress of Wine, Kelly Walquist, Women in the New Evangelization. Tell you a little bit more about that in a bit. But first, I want to say thank you to Vanessa Denhagarmo and Sherry Brownrigg for filling in while I was gone. I will be with you through next Wednesday. And then Thursday and Friday, Vanessa and Sherry will take over again because we have our second pilgrimage. We do two every year, Wine and Shrine, and then we do La Dolce Fide. And next year, by the way, we are filling up with Dr. Matthew Bunson and myself. We are doing In the Footsteps of the Popes. And we already have 25 people already, and it's a year away. So if you're interested in that particular pilgrimage, you can find it on my website, also Dr. Bunson's website, and my website, of course, teresatomeo.com. Corporate travel service out of southeastern Michigan, ctscentral.net, also has the info. But I just received an update yesterday from Corporate Travel on the manifest. And again, it's up to 25, and usually we like to keep it to one bus. And that means we have space for about maybe 15, 20 more people. So if you're interested, let us know and see if you can sign up, because it's going to be a great trip, especially with someone as wonderful as Dr. Matthew Bunson joining us on the history of the popes. We'll go to Rome, we'll go to Castel Gandolfo, we'll go to Viterbo, the city of the popes. We're also going to be going to Orvieto and Arezzo. It's going to be a beautiful trip through 3 different regions of Italy: Lazio, Umbria, and Tuscany. So let's take a look at the rundown for today. Before we tell you a little bit more about our trip, we have the one, the only, President Emeritus of EWTN, Doug Keck, with the Inside Word coming up at about 16 minutes past the hour. Fact Check Friday. There's a new survey out from Gallup. If you thought disrespect and disbelief of the media was low, well, it's even lower than you might imagine. A new survey out about trust in the media. It's at an all-time low. And I want to tie this in with a clip from an interview I did with a beautiful pilgrim, Catherine, from suburban Minneapolis, and how she said the pilgrimage just turned her life upside down. It strengthened her faith, and she realized toward the end of the trip that she needs to spend less time with the media and more time with God. And we'll play a short little clip from that interview. And then later in the week, I'm going to share the interview, the full interview, also a homily with our wonderful spiritual director, our last Mass, which was at St. Mark's in Venice, off the charts. And we'll also have another testimony from another wonderful pilgrim, I should say. It was a great, great week, very busy. We were in several different locations, starting in Rome, going through the Holy Doors, then moving on to Florence, and then going to the Garda area, Lake Garda. We went up to Madonna del Corona Shrine, which was off the charts beautiful, and then wrapping up in Venice. But all along, we just talked and laughed and cried and shared so much, and just were so fed by the beauty and the shrines and just the testimonies and talking to the other women. So if this is something you're interested in, again, all the details of our upcoming pilgrimages, including next year's wine, which is the Amalfi Coast in Puglia, as well as the Footsteps of the Popes with Matthew Bunson, everything you can find on my website at teresatomeo.com. Let's take a look at the forecast today on a Friday. It's a weekend already. Can you believe it? My goodness, time flies. All right, we have heavy rainfall and flooding concerns in the southwest and coastal low to impact in the east coast. I feel like my friend Chuck Gatica whenever I read these forecasts, like there should be a green screen behind me or something. Okay, deep tropical moisture leading to widespread showers and thunderstorms capable of producing flash flooding through early next week over the southwest and Four Corners. And then we have a coastal storm that's expected to develop off the southeast part of the country this evening, and also is expected to strengthen and bring some flooding, dangerous rip currents, gusty winds, and heavy rain up much of the east coast through early next week. So that's a look at the forecast on a Friday morning. Hope it's going well for you. It's October 10th, 2025 here on EWTN. Busy, busy morning, 4 minutes past the hour. Let's get started with the news on a Friday. Israel and Hamas close to a peace deal just days after marking 2 years since the October 7th attacks. People in Gaza took to the streets to celebrate, while people in New York, which has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, are excited but also remain somewhat skeptical.
You have to sometimes make an agreement with a party you don't trust, because you can't keep on just stretching out and fighting the war.
And I feel like they've done this before where they agree and then they're like, oh, actually, we have extra contingencies that we want to put on it.
As part of the first phase of that agreement, the White House is expecting to release the remaining hostages, with Palestinian prisoners also being let go. Israel will also pull back troops in Gaza in stages, which is already happening. And Pope Leo XIV, as Monica Nelson reports, is putting the poor at the center of the Catholic Church's mission, calling on bishops around the world to champion social justice and protect the most vulnerable.
In his first official document released Thursday, the Pope urged the faithful to take care for the poor into action, build bridges instead of walls, and challenge inequality and exploitative economic systems. He highlighted the struggles of migrants, women, and those living in extreme poverty, and praised Catholic charities and grassroots movements for their work. He stressed that a church that ignores the poor risks losing its moral purpose, and the church must translate its teachings into real-world actions to remain credible. I'm Monica Nelson.
Meanwhile, as Catholic News Agency reports, Pope Leo is signing the exhortation on October 4th, the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, who is known as the Little Poor Man. The pontiff explaining at the beginning of the document that he received it as an inheritance from Pope Francis, who was working on it during the final months of his life. The document tracing the Church's teaching on the poor, drawing on the Old and New Testaments, the practice of the early Christian community, the writings of the Church Fathers and Doctors, and the lives of the saints, as well as the documents of the Second Vatican Council and the magisterium of the popes since John the 23rd. The Pope also commending the example of contemplative and active religious orders throughout history. He says that have helped the poor with health care, food, shelter, and education. And yesterday, as Devin Watkins reports from Vatican News, both Pope Leo encouraged labor leaders Pope Leo encouraging human dignity of the most vulnerable.
Pope Leo XIV met on Thursday with labor leaders from the U.S. city of Chicago for an audience in the Vatican as they make a pilgrimage to Rome for the Jubilee Year of Hope. In his address, the Pope said the labor unions represent thousands of workers, praising their work to enhance the skills of workers for the common good of society. He said Cardinal Blaise Cupich, Archbishop of Chicago, who accompanied the group, has informed him of the contributions the labor unions of Chicago make to support seminarians with the help of civil and business leaders.
It is encouraging to hear of the strides that you've made in broadening the participation and inclusion of minorities in the labor movement through apprenticeships and training.
At the same time, he said, your commitment to the protection of the environment by teaching the skills needed for the development of renewable energies is not only commendable, but also timely, given the urgency of the need to care for our common home. Pope Leo then thanked the labor unions for their work to welcome immigrants and refugees, especially through their support of shelters and food pantries.
While recognizing that appropriate policies are necessary to keep communities safe, I encourage you to continue to advocate for society to respect the human dignity of all people, especially the most vulnerable.
In conclusion, Pope Leo XIV prayed that the pilgrimage of Chicago's labor leaders to Rome may be fruitful for their minds and hearts as they continue their study of issues related to the rights and obligations of workers. I'm Devin Watkins.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has chosen Catholic media companies Ascension and Word on Fire, as Catholic News Agency explains, to publish the Liturgy of the Hours, second edition. The Hours, also known as the Divine Office, is a set of daily prayers that priests and religious are obliged to pray and that many lay Catholics also partake in. The prayers are set according to the church calendar, are composed of psalms, hymns, and readings from Scripture. Ascension and Word on Fire are both known for their print, online, and video works, announcing last week that they will each publish a new version of the Liturgy of the Hours. The release date for the daily prayer will be shared upon the final approval from the Vatican. There are a number of lawsuits trying to block the state of Texas's Ten Commandments law, but that's not stopping, as Liz Case from the Texas Eagle Forum tells us, many volunteers from getting those posters with the Bible verses to quite a few schools.
The bill was written to where the school would get one in every single classroom. So that's what we'll do.
The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers Texas, is about to hear a case involving a similar law in Louisiana. The same activists that are trying to stop it there have also sued in Texas. And as Rory O'Neill tells us, don't expect any action to end the government shutdown today as senators have left the nation's capital.
2 more attempts to end the government shutdown failed in Senate floor votes on Thursday, with no more votes currently scheduled. Tuesday will mark 2 weeks since the shutdown began, and soon military members will miss their first paychecks. The Smithsonian Museums and the National Zoo say they'll remain open through Saturday, but are expected to close Sunday and stay closed as long as the shutdown continues. I'm Rory O'Neill.
New York's Attorney General Letitia James facing mortgage fraud charges following her indictment by a federal grand jury in Virginia. U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan presenting evidence related to a 2023 mortgage James allegedly used to help her niece purchase a home. That indictment follows Halligan's earlier case against former FBI Director James Comey. And Mark Mayfield tells us today is World Mental Health Day, held every October 10th to raise awareness of mental health issues around the world.
This year, the World Health Organization is highlighting mental health issues created by crises like natural disasters, war, and public health emergencies. The agency estimates that 1 in 5 people suffering through a crisis experience a mental health condition. I'm Mark Mayfield.
A nor'easter forecast to hit the East Coast with rain, wind, and coastal flooding over the weekend. As we mentioned in the forecast, meteorologists say the storm system is being ushered in by a cold front moving east, and it will eventually slow down and stall toward the end of the week. Weather models show the nor'easter developing on Saturday somewhere off the coast between Florida and South Carolina, strengthening later in the weekend on Sunday while hugging coastal North Carolina. Well, the storm is likely to move away from the coast or completely dissipate. Another batch of unseasonable heat is expected to set in by late next week. And Tammy Trujillo tells us Federal Reserve officials appear to support lower interest rates, but they're split on how many cuts should happen.
According to September's meeting summary, there was near unanimity among participants at the Federal Open Market Committee that the central bank's key overnight borrowing rate should be cut due to weakness in the labor market. But individual members' expectations showed the group split 10-9, with the slim majority expecting 2 more cuts before the end of the year. Meeting notes also show that officials were concerned with the state of the labor market, but still expected it to ease back to the Fed's 2% target. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
And singer Lee Greenwood says he's ready to sing God Bless the USA at the upcoming Super Bowl. The 82-year-old country star made the comment yesterday after Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson said Greenwood would be a better halftime performer than international pop star Bad Bunny. Greenwood telling the New York Post, I agree with Speaker Johnson. I would make a great performer for the Super Bowl, and said he's always thrilled to perform the national anthem or God Bless the USA during games. He also added he'd be happy to sing that song prior to kickoff. It is a Friday morning, October 10th. Great to be with you here on Catholic Connection on EWTN. Back with you live for a few more days today and then through Wednesday. Coming up in the program, of course, after the break, the wonderful Doug Keck will be joining us with the Inside Word. And then, I can't remember if I mentioned this or not, but Greg and Julie Alexander with our monthly marriage encounter. So excited to have them join me live because they'll be joining me live in person, me and Deacon Dom, next week for our La Dolce Fide couples pilgrimage, which will be a lot of fun. And we also have Fact Check Friday. How low can the approval of the media go? Well, there's a new survey hitting rock bottom. Shocker. Not really. We'll be right back. Friday, October 10th. Do hope your day is going well. Always great to catch up with Doug Keck, our President Emeritus at the network, and also, of course, a host of the wonderful program Bookmark, which I love. Doug, great to catch up with you. And I was telling you during the break that we had so many of the lovely women who joined us on the Wine and Shrine Conference, Women in the New Evangelization, who are huge fans of EWTN and listen to us all the time and have been listening for a long time. That, to me, is such an encouragement when people come up and say, I don't know what I'd do without EWTN.
Absolutely, and it's always the reason why for many years I had viewer services send me correspondence of people like that from all over the globe, and made sure I tried to share it with the entire staff, because when you're doing it, as you know, your nose is close to the grindstone, and you don't always see the benefits that are really accruing, and you sometimes can get caught up in feeling like you're just doing a regular job like any other job. And when you step back and you have a little bit of that feedback, you realize that it's really God's work and how lucky you are to participate in it. Not that it doesn't take effort and sacrifice. Of course, everything does, but it's one of the few things you can really feel like you accomplish something, that you're actually having an impact on people's daily lives in the most positive way.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I know you'll really find this heartwarming. So many of them also mention Mother Angelica.
Absolutely. I mean, she's core to EWTN. It was her mission. Wasn't anybody else's mission, and we're just carrying on the mission that God gave her. And her ability to reach people where they were. I mean, it's so interesting that there's so many people always, to some degree, blabbing about reaching people where they are and encountering where they are, etc. Mother Angelica was doing that since the 1980s, reaching people in their homes, people who are isolated, people who are estranged, people who are suffering, divorce, etc., things like that, things she herself had to deal with, and reaching out to her in such a way, because they knew that Mother was a comforter. She would, there was an old expression for a particular writer who said, our goal is to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable.
Afflict the comfortable. Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was H.L. Mencken. But, anyway, that idea, and Mother had no patience with people who should know better. And that's why many times her upsetment was more with people inside the church, because her expectation was they should know better. The poor person in the pew who's trying to live out their daily life, those are the people who really deserved the mercy of God.
Absolutely. And that brings us to what we're talking about, because there's so many wonderful programs coming up in the month of October, because it's so busy. So many feast days, and, of course, the month of the Rosary, the Pro-Life Month.
Absolutely.
What's on the docket?
Well, there's several Marian feasts that are recognized in the next couple of days coming up. Starting tomorrow, you've got Hidden Gems, Catholic Shrines in America, National Shrine of Our Lady of La Leche. That program is going to be airing tomorrow, and that's the feast day on Our Lady of La Leche. And that's a series we've done on Hidden Gems, really working with a producer to really find those little gem shrines that are populated throughout the United States that people are so unaware of, that are really right down the block. There's also another program on Our Lady of the Pillar, a very interesting program, juxtaposes kind of St. James the Apostle along with a 21st century student who is diagnosed with cancer, and how he draws on Our Lady for strength. So that's something you can go forward with, as well as then we roll right into, as you alluded to, obviously, Our Lady of Fatima on the 13th, The Message of Fatima, that particular movie will be presenting on Saturday night. We've also got the Rosary and Candlelight Procession from the Shrine of Our Lady of Fatima, one of the most popular, I think, events we ever carry. It's going to be on Sunday at 4:30 p.m. It's really, really a beautiful, beautiful event. And then we've got Holy Mass in honor of Our Lady of Fatima as well, and the famous Adieu as well, another amazing event that'll be airing on Monday morning at 5 a.m. and then encoring at 3 p.m. We've also got the ever-popular Worldwide Children's Holy Hour we do every year, and participate with Father Joseph and the children from our own chapel. And so that's something that many, many people enjoy every year. We've got additional programs, the Holy Mass and Eucharistic Procession from St. Patrick's Cathedral happening next Tuesday with His Eminence, Sean Cardinal O'Malley and Cardinal Dolan, and sponsored by the Napa Institute. And that's that wonderful Eucharistic procession you've seen so many images of in the past. This is their annual event, so you can check that out. And our team, EWTN, is producing that event, as they have every year. And, of course, Steve Beaumont and his crew will do a great job, as they always do. We've also got the Lives of the Saints coming up later in the week. St. Teresa of Avila, one of your favorites. And also airing on the feast day of St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. We've got on Thursday a couple of programs related to her. So as you can see, and as you indicated, it really is, October is the month of Mary, as it turns out to, at least programming-wise on EWTN. Go to EWTN.com, find out all the wonderful information. And, of course, don't forget our on-demand platform and our YouTube channel, where so much can be found, in addition to our podcast central, ever growing.
Getting back to Our Lady of Fatima, now, is that something that is produced by a group or a production company in Fatima, and we tap into it, so to speak,
Yes.
or is that our people over there?
No, those events themselves are produced usually by the national channel. I forget which one Portugal does, but it's probably done. Those kind of events are so important to the countries themselves, like in Italy with RT, all of these groups doing these particular things. They're such big events, and they're so important, quite honestly, to, in a sense, the prestige of the country, and I hate to say it, also tourism, to make sure that, people realize there's this wonderful place you can come to and visit. On a wonderful pilgrimage and making that available. And over the years, obviously, we reached out and worked out ways of being able to access this material. It was much more difficult in the past. It's a lot easier these days through technology to make those available, but we're thrilled to be able to have those. Of course, what we do is we get the event from there, and then we wrap it with our own hosts.
Sure.
Usually, over the years, Colin has done it because he had actually lived in Fatima for a period of time and has great knowledge about the event, etc. So we're excited to be able to bring those events to people with a particular EWTN focus.
In October, there's so much. Now, in terms of some of these events, as you mentioned, are cyclical, so you can put them on the calendar and say, okay, we're going to be doing this, 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 this. But then we have to be flexible and say, well, if something big happens, and that's why it's so important to be able to tap into these events that are already, let's say, in the easiest way to explain it, being taken care of technology-wise, so you don't have to dedicate a crew to that. But then if something happens, we have enough crews around the world in various locations that we can address those other areas.
Right,
as well.
and that's where you build in the technological infrastructure, which has been built in over the last, let's say, 20 years, the ability to have affiliates in different parts of the world, to have technology interconnects in such a way that you can access the events as they're made available locally. In many cases, years and years ago, these events were happening in their local countries, but getting them was expensive or almost impossible. And so, technology has really helped with that, has lowered the cost and made it a lot easier to make those available. And we have, over the years, by telling people we're interested in these events, they themselves said, okay, well, that's great, because then we'll do more and we'll make it available because this is great for us. We have a very good relationship with Our Lady of Knock Shrine, where we do masses on a regular basis, where we have our own interconnect there, because it was important for our Irish brethren to be able to promote Knock and for people to understand about that wonderful apparition and shrine. And likewise, whether it's in Fatima, our relationship with Lourdes, we have that Lourdes Rosary on a regular basis, on a daily basis, that Peter Gagnon and his team worked out over many years. These are relationship-building situations where we get to work with people, and because EWTN has a reputation for being orthodox and traditional and trustworthy, we find a lot of organizations and shrines are very willing to work with us.
Well, what's really cool, I know October, a lot of folks are having their drives, what we call the pledge drives or the membership drives. And this is why you support what we do and what our affiliates do, because this is what you're getting. The fact that EWTN has spent the time and the effort and has done the hard work to really build those relationships. This is a result. So folks need to keep that in mind, especially during this month when many people are having fundraisers. It's great to catch up with you, Doug. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk again soon. We'll be right back on a Friday morning on Catholic Connection, October 10th. Twenty-eight minutes past the hour on a Friday. It's October 10th, 2025. Great to be with you here on EWTN's Catholic Connection. Of course, fresh back from a pilgrimage yesterday. I flew out of Venice into Rome, and then Deacon Dom picked me up, came back, unpacked, and got ready for the show today, and couldn't wait to come on and talk to you about all the wonderful things we experienced. And one of the biggest things that happens on pilgrimage, and this ties into our Fact Check Friday this morning, is the fact that you are away from the media. And even though we have our phones, we really encourage our pilgrims not to go on their email and check, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 times a day. and to use it for prayer, because we do prayer on the bus, or maybe they're going to have a rosary app or whatever, do play the rosary on the bus. We, even over this past pilgrimage, did the Liturgy of the Hours together. It was just beautiful, led by our wonderful spiritual director, Father John Klockman. But getting away from the media and being surrounded by beautiful shrines and having conversations, real face-to-face, FaceTime conversations, not on a phone or on a laptop, makes all the difference in the world. And when you think about it, how much time do you think that adults spend with media every single day? Any idea? What are you thinking? 5 hours, 6 hours? Well, according to the latest statistics, adults spend between 10 and 12 hours with media, all different types of media consumption, 12 hours a day. And so think about that, and think about all the violence, all the over-sexualization, all the sensational and all the ugly stuff out there in the news, including the bias, of course, in the secular media predominantly. But think about how great your life would be if you tone some of that down and listen to some different things, or stay tuned more closely, obviously, to good, clean, healthy, uplifting, faith-filled media, such as we were talking with Doug, EWTN and our affiliates. So important. And you know what? Why not? A new survey just out yesterday. And this is, you can find this on, actually it was last week, just recently, earlier this month. This is on newsbusters.org. After hitting a record low last year, Americans' trust in the nation's legacy media has now sunk to a new low, even lower according to Gallup. They reported earlier this month, get this, when you compare it to 1972, their first survey, back then in 1972, 7 in 10 adults had either a fair amount, about 50%, or a great deal, 18%, of trusted newspapers, TV, and radio to report the news fully, accurately, and fairly. Today, 7 to 10 have not very much confidence, only 36%, or not at all, 34%. This year's survey marks the first time that fewer than 3 in 10 U.S. adults have expressed trust in the news they're being fed by the media. The confidence level fell below 50% in 2004 and hasn't returned to that level since then. Today's 28% say they have at least a fair amount of trust in the media, down from 31% last year and 40% 5 years ago. And listen to this. This is very interesting. All political affiliation groups registering record low confidence this year through the legacy media's well-documented liberal bias continues to buoy Democrats' trust. Even so, barely half, 51% of Democrats even have confidence in the news media today. Although older adults have significantly more faith in the media than do younger Americans, and I would say that's not even baby boomers. I would say that's people who are older than the baby boomers, maybe what we call, America's greatest generation, because those who were growing up at the time of World War II and post-World War II, I know that would include some baby boomers, but for the most part, let's say our parents or our grandparents grew up sitting down and watching, right, Walter Cronkite. Well, those days are long gone, and I think many, many baby boomers are also very disillusioned with the media. In the early 2000s, Americans in all 4 age groups expressed relatively similar levels of confidence in the media, or just above 50%. Since then, confidence among all 4 groups has gradually declined, but less so among Americans 65 and older. The annual Gallup survey was conducted last month, in the middle of September, polling adults ages 18 living in all 50 U.S. states and the District of Columbia. It has a margin of sampling error of 14 percentage points. Okay, but this is really, really important when we think about this segment that we call Fact Check Friday. The fact, pun intended, that so many adults now, 7 in 10, are losing trust or have lost great trust in the media. All the more reason you should do as one of our pilgrims, Catherine from Minnesota, is suggesting, and spend more time with God in prayer as opposed to with, especially, the secular media. Here's part of a quick interview I did with Catherine at the end of our pilgrimage. Take a listen.
That is very interesting. I think that I need to start going back to church regularly. I got into the habit, especially after COVID, of, I can just pray. Yeah. I can just be in the presence. But I think that I will change my free time. I can say a rosary. I can be in prayer. I want to get like nonsense TV out of my life and spend my time differently, to be in prayer, to be in faith. I found it, I'm so calm. I've had no anxiety on this trip.
Wow.
And I mean, just the hugs, the embraces, and the amazing times of, I never knew who I was walking next to or sitting next to.
But they were always the person you need to be at that moment. You told me that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And the deep conversations, and sometimes they were lighthearted, but most of them were really real.
Yeah.
It was like I had 35 of my best friends on a bus, and we were all complete strangers.
I was telling you before we did the interview, it's hard to explain to people what happens, but if you just open yourself up like you did, and I'm sure the Holy Spirit was talking to your husband, and when you do that, when you say yes, God says, okay, I got this. Well, you've been a joy to travel with. Thank you so much, and please keep in touch. Stay active in wine, and come on another trip with us.
I would love to do that. I look forward to my next trip with you.
Catherine, God love you. Safe travels back to Minnesota.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back on Catholic Connection. That was actually Catherine Paradise from suburban Minneapolis. We'll be sharing her full interview in a few days. Next week, we're going to do a whole show on the experience we had with Wine and Shrine. But if you notice what she said, she's on pilgrimage, so she disconnected, which we encourage all of our pilgrims to do. And what did that result in? More prayer time, obviously, more conversations, more FaceTime with the women on the trip. And she grew so much. She went into a lot of detail about how she was not so sure about the trip. And she mentioned her husband because she said it was her husband who encouraged her to go, who said thought she would really benefit from it. But think about how much more we gain when we remove nonsense, as she said, I love that phrase, nonsense TV out of our lives, or maybe just scrolling too much on the internet or spending too much time on social media, or maybe spending too much time checking who's emailing us or what's happening. So important to give ourselves downtime and to allow ourselves to be away from the media. And sometimes, yes, that means even away from us, though we want you to come back right away. Sometimes we just need to break away from the media. And why wouldn't we want to do that, especially when it comes to the secular media and we see these new surveys showing just how poorly they are doing in terms of public trust. After hitting a record low last year, America's trust in the nation's legacy media has now sunk even lower. So why not do as Catherine is planning to do, spend less time with junk media, nonsense media, and more time in prayer and more time in relationship with other people. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Catholic Connection. Great to catch up with Julia Gregg Alexander of the Alexander House, the website, thealexanderhouse.org. They'll be our co-host next week for our La Dolce Fide, celebrating marriage in the footprints of the Saints of Umbria. They'll be flying in, leaving Wednesday and flying in on Thursday morning with the rest of our group. And we thought, given the very powerful message that Erica Kirk gave at the memorial of her husband, Charlie Kirk, of course, who was assassinated earlier this month in Utah at a college campus event, when she was so strong and not only forgave the man who assassinated her husband right then and there, but she talked about the importance of relationship and what it means to be in a true and beautiful and empowering relationship with your husband. And she used a term, to be your husband's helper. And there was a really interesting New York Post article that came out shortly after her speech at her husband's memorial. And the title of that article was, Erica Kirk is right. It is beautiful and empowering to be your husband's helper. But Greg, let me start with you. This whole idea of a woman being a helper is so misunderstood, is it not? And thanks for joining us.
Oh, absolutely. Like many of the other words in our society, submissive and everything else, it's totally understood. And it's been twisted to sound like a sense of weakness, if you will, when in reality, it's truly a sign of strength. You know, just as God helps us, a wife is there to help her husband, and bringing that divine strength to the marriage relationship, not in the sense of servitude. And it's all about partnership, Teresa. You know, we're two people coming together, working towards holiness with the shared goal to help each other get to heaven.
Absolutely. And Julie, the misconception of being a helper doesn't somehow mean you lose your identity, right?
Absolutely not, Teresa. No, you don't lose your identity or your voice. Scripture never says that it's beneath a woman to do this. It actually tells us that we are created to be a helpmate for our spouse, for our husband. It actually elevates the woman's role. And when I support Greg, it's not because I'm beneath him, but it's because I'm with him, walking with him, going on this journey, supporting, encouraging. And it's the gifts and the strengths that I bring into marriage that then it brings this unity and makes love thrive. I think also, Teresa, we talk about that losing our identity or losing who I am. And in reality, marriage is supposed to help you lose some of who you were. You're supposed to become a new creation, but one in which Christ intended to be is in each other, helping each other grow to holiness and come closer to God.
And Greg, doesn't this start really, if you get back to the basics of our Christian faith, in submitting to God's will and not doing our own?
Absolutely, Teresa. And I think that in part is part of the problem is that we don't have a good understanding of God's plan and design for marriage. Because in a marriage relationship, the roles are not about some kind of rank or position, if you will, but they're about understanding the responsibility and love that we should have for each other. And again, coming together in that mutual submission that St. Paul talks about in Ephesians 5, where husband and wives are called to be there to serve each other. So therefore, the husband is not a dictator or lording over his wife, but he's there as a servant leader and in a particular way modeling Christ's love for the church. And of course, the wife's role is not one of passivity, that she is there in that powerful role to be literally that heartbeat of the family. In essence, she's the spiritual anchor, so to speak.
Talking with Greg and Julie Alexander, the Alexander House, for our monthly mornings on marriage, thealexanderhouse.org. And Greg, let me go back to you first, and then Julie, you can jump in really before we move on to our next topic and these great notes that you gave me, which are also good. I hope we can get through them all. But do you think that Erica Kirk has been helping women who may be struggling with this understand better what it means to be a helper? Because if you look at someone like her, she's so accomplished in her own right. I mean, she has multiple degrees. She's a big part of his ministry and his work. She's a mom, but she never lost her identity. She was Miss Colorado, I think, wasn't she, or Miss Utah? I forget, but she was a beauty queen. But in addition to that, extremely well educated, knowledgeable in the faith, and obviously she had her own ministry where she helped women. So, Greg, do you think that people will be thinking a little bit differently about married women who are faithful after this whole thing with Erica Kirk?
I sure hope so, Teresa, because we see so much of the opposite in our culture today. In fact, yesterday I was watching a couple of videos of Aisha Curry, Steph Curry, the superstar for the Golden State Warriors. And, here she is married to this great athlete, superstar, multi-millionaire, billionaire, and yet she's complaining about having to give up her career and you regret having children. She never wanted children, and he was not really the guy he wanted to marry. And a lot of people are chiming in on that, we need this, we need to deserve to be this. And to have now that positive voice coming out about wife, woman, and motherhood and the beauties of that, we need so much more of that. So I hope it is the beginning of those kind of voices coming to the surface, really allowing women to understand what the role of wife, woman, and mother is all about, and the beauty of that role.
Yeah, Julie, what are your thoughts on that? Yeah,
we've talked about this so many times as being in careers, and we talk about that, both of us, about that was the most important thing.
Yeah,
being
me too.
Somebody, being seen, making all this money and proving our worth. And when you realize you don't have anything to prove in that way, and you have a husband, when we come together and understand each other's roles, support each other's roles, assist each other in again, the needs, meeting each other's emotional needs, and being there to pray for one another, there is nothing more amazing and more rewarding in my entire life than when I know I have done a good job in serving Greg in that particular day. Why? Because I know that when I go and see God face to face, He's not going to see how much money I made. He's not going to see how many people I helped do what this, that, or the other. But how well did you love my son Gregory, and did you care for him in the way that I asked you to do so?
Wow.
What will my answer be? The only thing I've realized is that understanding when I do that, it makes everything pale in comparison.
Yeah. Well, people wonder why there's such an involvement sometimes of the wives in the diaconate program. You cannot go forward during formation if the wife does not agree to it, because they want the wife to discern along with the husband. Is it going to work for the family? Is it really what God is calling the husband to? But you are entering into that, not that you're going to be ordained and receive, obviously, holy orders, but you are going to be entering into that relationship with the church in a new way as a wife of a deacon. And so if we're seeing this, then we shouldn't be surprised at how important marriage is. And Greg, I'll go to you first for the response.
Yes, absolutely. I think the diaconate program and the wives in that program is a great demonstration as to what those relationships should be like. And I always love it for the fact because the deacons are kind of having their feet in both vocations, the
right.
holy orders and holy matrimony. And so people are really looking at the deacons in our parishes and their wives to see how that relationship works, what the dynamics are like. And, right quick, I just want to say thanks to you and Deacon Dom and your many travels to various dioceses, really teaching the importance of that particular fact as well, about the importance of the wives to be there, to be that help, to be that support. And just as it is in our marriage relationships, we can't do it without our wives. I can't do it without Julie. And as I alluded to earlier, she is that spiritual anchor in our home. I used to call her the spiritual leader. She said, no, I'm not going to take that role. That's your role. Why don't you call me the spiritual suggester? Where she suggested I leave.
Well, I think it's amazing, Teresa. So I want to make sure we make this point as well. Because, I am able and willing and encouraged to serve Greg because he allows me to serve him in such a beautiful way. Mm-hmm. He is so thankful. He's so respectful in that he honors me in my womanhood, in me being his wife and a mother. And that helps tremendously because we can say serve, be a servant, and not be a doormat. No, but it also helps when the husband takes his position and his role to be that leader. Yes, in order to lead her, the wife, and the children to heaven. That's his job. When he does that, I love serving him. I love being his helpmate and helping him do his most important mission, which is allowing our family to become closer to the reality of what we're called to be, and that's to be a witness to God and his love here on this earth.
Okay, so you guys always give us such great practical tips. And by the way, if you're just joining us, Greg and Julie Alexander, the Alexander House, at website alexanderhouse.org. They'll be co-hosting our Laudace Fide marriage with us in several days, actually, right around the corner. Greg, let me start with you. What does this practically look like when we're talking about being a helper in marriage? It can sound maybe patriarchal, but it really isn't. But what does that practically look like? How do we live that out?
Well, it looks like a lot of different things, Teresa, but I think, first of all, we have to go back and redefine what leadership and help looks like in your marriage. We can kind of give some general things, but, every marriage relationship is different. So what looks like leadership for me might be different for Deacon Tom and Teresa. And so, first of all, really having to go back and have that conversation as a couple as to what that leadership and help looks like. But, for me, it's Julie coming, as she said earlier, uplifting me, giving me that support, encouraging me, giving me accolades for the things that I do, and those kind words. And those things go a long way. She talked about it earlier in regards to emotional needs. That's exactly what it is, because it is the meeting of those needs that allows us to feel that sense of value and worth in the relationship. And so helping in that way from just that overall sense of well-being, but again, helping out around the house. I many times give the example of when we had the ice storm here a couple of years ago, and I spent a Saturday morning cutting down trees and limbs and stacking them, and Julie saw me doing all that. And when I was finished, she brought me in the house. She led me to the bathroom where she had a nice warm bath drawn, candles around the tub with my smooth jazz Spotify station on. And she said, hey, this is for you. Take 2 minutes, take 2 hours, whatever you need. I just want you to relax. And so again, coming alongside and helping and seeing that what each other are doing, but in this case, what she saw me doing for the family, and now that was her way of saying thank you.
Yeah, and Teresa, we encourage couples often to come to each other and say, how can I serve you today?
Which is exactly what Erica Kirk said Charlie would do, right? Every day he would say, how can I be a better husband? How can I serve you differently today?
Yes, and it takes humility. Yes, it does, because we live in a culture and a world to say, we always call it the Janet Jackson syndrome. What have you done for me lately? What are you doing for me today? What about me? What about me? And when we have that mentality, we end up on opposite sides kind of being just a challenge to each other. We always tell couples, you are on the same team. This is Team Alexander. How are we going to work together to help each other, to assist each other? And what can I do today to make your load lighter? Is there anything that I can do to help you today to know that you are loved by God?
Beautiful. All right, we only have 2 minutes left. So any final thoughts? And Greg, I'll go to you first before we wrap up. And what would you like to leave with our listeners today in light of the beautiful message that Erica Kirk gave us a few weeks ago about the beauty of being a helper and being a partner in your marriage? Greg?
I think what you just said, Teresa, reminding husband that your wife is there as a gift from God to help you. So therefore, allowing her to cherish you, to honor you, and never taking it for granted. Remember to acknowledge the good that you see your spouse doing by simply saying thank you. Because when we both walk in that humility and grace, marriage becomes the most beautiful reflection of God right here on earth.
Julie?
One thing we're excited about, Teresa, is we have a new resource, and it's free for people to come to our website, and it'll be marriage according to the gospel. So each week we will give a reflection, a teaching for marriage, but then a grace and action for the couples to do that week on the homily the gospel they just heard the week prior.
That is so cool. Is that already started on your website?
It is today.
Oh, there you go.
Well, okay, it's good. We're excited because we know that people need to know how to implement, to live out practically what we hear in the Gospels every single day.
That is so exciting. You guys have such great resources. Okay, so again, it's thealexanderhouse.org. Greg and Julie Alexander, I cannot believe we're going to see each other in like less than 5 days in person.
We are so excited. It'll be so much fun.
If I could just
we're going to meet all the saints related to marriage, Jacopane and Todi and St. Rita of Kasha, and oh my goodness, so many more. God bless you guys. Thanks for your great ministry, thealexanderhouse.org, Mornings on Marriage with Julie and Greg Alexander, and we'll be right back to let you know what's coming up on hour number 2 on EWTN's Radio Extra. Stay tuned. It's 55 minutes past the hour. Hope your Friday is going well. October 10th, 2025. Great to be back with you live. Coming up in the next hour, a testimony from our Wine and Shrine pilgrimage. You don't want to miss this testimony. It's a young woman, Megan, who moved out to California with lots of hopes and dreams and found herself instead living on her cousin's couch until she opened a box from her mom that had so many different holy cards, prayer cards, including a card of St. Anthony of Padua. And wait till you hear the impact that saint has had on her life and how it brought her to this pilgrimage. You don't want to miss it. That's coming up in our 2 cent segment. And then I am so excited. He's one of my favorite bishops in the whole wide world. And I mean that sincerely. The Most Reverend Thomas J. Olmsted, Bishop Emeritus of the Diocese of Phoenix. He's going to be joined by the CEO of Tepeyac Leadership. There is a beautiful conference coming up in Mexico City entitled Championing the Role of the Laity Around the World. I cannot wait to talk to both of them, especially catching up with Bishop Olmsted. He's been a great supporter of my ministry over the years. When he was Bishop of Phoenix, he invited me out to speak several times, so it'll be great to catch up with him. So that is a program for the next hour of Catholic Connection on EWTN Radio Extra. I do hope you can stay tuned. And if you can't find EWTN Radio Extra, just actually do a Google search, or you can just go to our website and do search and do EWTN Radio Extra, and there will be a link on how you can listen live. More coming up on a Friday. Thanks for tuning in to the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network.
Welcome to Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, keeping you connected to your faith and your world. Teresa tackles the issues of faith and culture, the pro-life message, and media awareness. And now, here's Teresa Tomeo.
Happy Friday, hour number 2 of EWTN's Radio Extra and Catholic Connection on the EWTN Radio Extra channel. It's great to be back with you live, as I mentioned in the first part of the program, and thanks for tuning in to the second part of CC with TT on EWTN Radio Extra. Coming up after the news and the weather, so excited to share with you a testimony from one of our Wine and Shrine pilgrims. Now, WINE is an acronym, which means Women in the New Evangelization. It was founded by my friend and a wonderful teacher of the faith, Kelly Walquist, who is a catechetical leader in the Archdiocese of Minneapolis and around the country. She actually runs a catechetical institute in the Archdiocese there, but really is the brain person behind the WINE ministry, which is such a beautiful, supportive women's ministry, supportive of other women's ministry. And again, the acronym stands for Women in the New Evangelization, CatholicVineyard.com. And this was our 9th pilgrimage that Kelly and I have done for women to Italy, and we entitle it Wine and Shrine. And this year we started in Rome for the Holy Doors, then we went to Florence, then we went to the Garda area, Lake Garda, which is crazy gorgeous. We went up to the shrine of Madonna della Corona, and then we went over to Padua for St. Anthony before wrapping up at St. Mark's in Venice. And so the testimony you're going to hear is from one of our pilgrims, Megan, who had a profound and has had a profound relationship with St. Anthony and was hoping that someday she would get to pray at his tomb. And that happened during this pilgrimage. And her testimony is so beautiful. And I think it's something, her journey, even though the details might be different in our own lives, her journey and how a saint came in to help. She asked him to intercede for her, and those prayers were answered. St. Anthony taking those prayers, of course, like a friend does, to our Lord. But I'm going to let her tell the story. So next week, what we're going to do next Wednesday, we're going to give you a full hour, pretty much a full hour, of some of the other experiences we've had on this profound pilgrimage, Women in the New Evangelization, subtitled Wine and Shrine. Because sometimes people think when you're on pilgrimage that everybody is in the same place. Everybody is an on-fire Catholic and they know so much about the faith. Look, if I've learned anything in 25 years in ministry, it's that everybody is on their own journey. And it's God's timing, it's not ours. Everybody's at a different place, and that's okay. God loves you where you are, but he also loves you too much to keep you there. And if we're not growing in our faith, then it really isn't faith. It's just a thing that we do, because if we're still alive, God is not through with us yet, and he wants us to grow and grow and grow and get closer to him so we can be with him forever in heaven. All right, so that's our 2 cents for today, a testimony from the Wine and Shrine pilgrimage. And then, as I mentioned in the first hour, I cannot tell you how excited I am to catch up again with an amazing bishop, the Most Reverend Thomas J. Olmsted, Bishop Emeritus of Phoenix, along with the CEO of Tepeyac Leadership. We're going to be talking about a beautiful event coming up, championing the role of the laity around the world, and it's taking place in Mexico City. And yes, of course, there's a big connection, obviously being Tepeyac Leadership, with Our Lady of Guadalupe. So that is our second hour of the program on a Friday. Great to be with you. Let's talk about the weather, because there are some storms developing. You'll hear a little bit more about this in the news. The National Weather Service says we have deep tropical moisture that will lead to widespread showers and thunderstorms capable of producing flash flooding through early next week. Now, this is over the southwest and Four Corners. And then they're saying that a coastal storm is expected to develop off the southeast U.S. coast this evening and then strengthen and bring flooding, dangerous rip currents, gusty winds, and heavy rain up much of the east coast through early next week. And they're calling that a nor'easter. So that is the weather forecast, and be safe if you're out there in those affected areas. We just want to keep you up to date. It's already 4 minutes past the hour. It's a second hour of CC, Catholic Connection with TT, Teresa Tomeo, on a Friday, October 10th, 2025. Let's check the news now on a Friday morning. Israel and Hamas close to a peace deal just days after marking 2 years since the October 7th attacks. People in Gaza took to the streets to celebrate this week. While in the Big Apple, New York City, folks are excited, but they have the largest Jewish community, and some people are happy but also a little bit skeptical.
You have to sometimes make an agreement with a party you don't trust, because you can't keep on just stretching out and fighting the war.
And I feel like they've done this before where they agree and then they're like, oh, actually, we have extra contingencies that we want to put on it.
The IDF says, however, a ceasefire is now in effect as part of that deal agreed to by Israel and Hamas and ratified by the Israeli cabinet. The first phase of the U.S. brokered deal includes the release of all remaining hostages in Gaza. Also includes a conditional Israeli withdrawal from Gaza and the release of some Palestinian prisoners. Pope Leo XIV is putting the poor at the center of the Catholic Church's mission, Monica Nelson tells us, calling on bishops worldwide to champion social justice and protect the most vulnerable.
In his first official document released Thursday, the Pope urged the faithful to take care for the poor into action, build bridges instead of walls, and challenge inequality and exploitative economic systems. He highlighted the struggles of migrants, women, and those living in extreme poverty, and praised Catholic charities and grassroots movements for their work. He stressed that a church that ignores the poor risks losing its moral purpose, and the church must translate its teachings into real-world actions to remain credible. I'm Monica Nelson.
And Catholic News Agency reports that Leo signed that exhortation on the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, who is traditionally known as a little poor man. That feast day, of course, October 4th. Holy Father explaining at the beginning of the document he received it as an inheritance from Pope Francis, who was working on it during the final months of his life. The document tracing the Church's teaching on the poor, drawing on the Old and New Testaments, a practice of the early Christian community, the writings of church fathers and doctors, the lives of the saints, the documents of the Second Vatican Council, and the magisterium of the Pope since St. John the 23rd. Leo also commends the example of contemplative and active religious orders throughout history that have helped the poor with health care, food, shelter, and education. And as Devin Watkins tells us from Vatican News, yesterday the Holy Father also encouraged labor leaders in their efforts to welcome immigrants and to foster respect for human dignity of the most vulnerable.
Pope Leo XIV met on Thursday with labor leaders from the U.S. city of Chicago for an audience in the Vatican as they make a pilgrimage to Rome for the Jubilee Year of Hope. In his address, the Pope said the labor unions represent thousands of workers, praising their work to enhance the skills of workers for the common good of society. He said Cardinal Blaise Cupich, Archbishop of Chicago, who accompanied the group, has informed him of the contributions the labor unions of Chicago make to support seminarians with the help of civil and business leaders.
It is encouraging to hear of the strides that you've made in broadening the participation and inclusion of minorities in the labor movement through apprenticeships and training.
At the same time, he said, your commitment to the protection of the environment by teaching the skills needed for the development of renewable energies is not only commendable, but also timely, given the urgency of the need to care for our common home. Pope Leo then thanked the labor unions for their work to welcome immigrants and refugees, especially through their support of shelters and food pantries.
While recognizing that appropriate policies are necessary to keep communities safe, I encourage you to continue to advocate for society to respect the human dignity of all people, especially the most vulnerable.
In conclusion, Pope Leo XIV prayed that the pilgrimage of Chicago's labor leaders to Rome may be fruitful for their minds and hearts as they continue their study of issues related to the rights and obligations of workers. I'm Devin Watkins.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, USCCB, choosing Catholic media, as Catholic News Agency tells us, the company's Ascension and Word on Fire, to publish the Liturgy of the Hours, second edition. The Hours, also known as a divine office, is a set of daily prayers that priests and religious are obliged to pray, and that many lay Catholics also partake in. The prayers are set according to the church calendar, and they're composed of psalms, hymns, and readings from sacred scripture. Ascension and Word on Fire, both known for their print, online, and video works, announced October 7th. They will each publish a new version of the Liturgy of the Hours. A release date, though, for the daily prayer will be shared upon final approval from the Vatican. And there are a number of lawsuits trying to block Texas's Ten Commandments law, but that's not stopping volunteers from getting posters with the Bible verses to schools. Liz Case with Texas Eagle Forum says they've been busy getting donated posters to as many school districts as possible.
The bill was written to where the school would get one in every single classroom, so that's what we'll do.
The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers Texas, is about to hear a case involving a similar law in Louisiana. The same activists are trying to stop it there, have also sued in Texas. And Rory O'Neill tells us don't expect any action to end the government shutdown today, as senators have left the building. They've left the nation's capital.
2 more attempts to end the government shutdown failed in Senate floor votes on Thursday, with no more votes currently scheduled. Tuesday will mark 2 weeks since the shutdown began, and soon military members will miss their first paychecks. The Smithsonian Museums and the National Zoo say they'll remain open through Saturday, but are expected to close Sunday and stay closed as long as the shutdown continues. I'm Rory O'Neill.
New York's Attorney General Letitia James facing mortgage fraud charges following her indictment by a federal grand jury in Virginia. U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan presenting evidence related to a 2023 mortgage James allegedly used to help her niece purchase a home. The indictment follows Halligan's earlier case against former FBI Director James Comey. And Mark Mayfield tells us today is World Mental Health Day, held every October 10th to raise awareness of mental health issues around the world.
This year, the World Health Organization is highlighting mental health issues created by crises like natural disasters, war, and public health emergencies. The agency estimates that 1 in 5 people suffering through a crisis experience a mental health condition. I'm Mark Mayfield.
As we mentioned in the weather forecast, a nor'easter is forecast to hit the East Coast with rain, wind, and coastal flooding over the weekend. Meteorologists say the storm system is being ushered in by a potent cold front moving east and will eventually slow down and stall toward the end of the week. Now, weather models show nor'easter developing over the weekend on Saturday somewhere off the coast between Florida and South Carolina, strengthening on Sunday while hugging the coastal North Carolina area. And while the storm is unlikely to move away from the coast or completely dissipate, another batch of unseasonable heat is expected to set in by late next week. And finally, in our news segment on the second hour of Catholic Connection on EWTN's Radio Extra, Tammy Trujillo tells us Federal Reserve officials appear to support lower interest rates but are split on how many cuts should happen.
According to September's meeting summary, there was near unanimity among participants at the Federal Open Market Committee that the central bank's key overnight borrowing rate should be cut due to weakness in the labor market. But individual members' expectations showed the group split 10-9, with the slim majority expecting 2 more cuts before the end of the year. Meeting notes also show that officials were concerned with the state of the labor market, but still expected it to ease back to the Fed's 2% target. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Let me squeeze in one more story because I really hope this happens. Just my personal opinion. I'm sure you have your own. But Lee Greenwood says he's ready to sing God Bless the USA at the Super Bowl. The 82-year-old country star making the comment yesterday after Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson said Greenwood would be a better halftime performer than international pop star Bad Bunny. Greenwood telling the New York Post, I agree with Speaker Johnson. I would make a great performer for the Super Bowl, and I'm always thrilled to perform a national anthem or God Bless USA during games. He also said that he would be happy to sing the song prior to kickoff. It is a Friday morning. It's October 10th, 2025. Great to be back with you here on Catholic Connection. It's a second hour of CC with TT on EWTN, more specifically EWTN's Radio Extra. When we come back on a Friday, you know what? There's an old saying. You can't have a testimony unless you've been tested. There's a beautiful testimony we are going to share from one of our pilgrims, Megan, with a connection to one of our great saints, St. Anthony of Padua. Pray for us. It was one of our stops on the trip. We'll be right back. Hope you're having a beautiful Friday in October. Beautiful month, the month of our rosary, a month dedicated to pro-life. It's October 10th, 2025. Great to be back with you live. And I just returned literally just yesterday afternoon, wrapping up my first of 2 pilgrimages this month in Italy. It was Wine and Shrine, Women in the New Evangelization. The website is catholicvineyard.com. And my co-host and my little sis, Kelly Walquist, and I have been doing these now for 9 years. And they are just, I can't even tell you, so much fun, so filled with joy, busy but beautiful, but incredibly helpful, I think, and just spiritual. So many people that come on the trip, people think, well, you know, I'm not that Catholic. I'm Catholic, but gosh, you know, I'm not all like uber religious. And you know what? That's okay. Everyone is moving at their own pace. And it's not up to us to bring people to a particular spot. Now, that is up to them with their relationship with God. A pilgrimage can certainly help, and that's what we are finding every time we do a pilgrimage. More and more people have these aha moments and make the connection. We don't have to do much work. We just get them there. as I've been saying, when you put them in St. Peter's or in the Duomo in Florence or stand them in front of the David, you can't help but think about God. And some are strong in their faith after going through some profound things. And this is why I wanted to share the clip that I want to share with you, a clip, an interview I did with Megan. She's one of our pilgrims because she was at a stronger faith point in her life. There are other pilgrims, though, that were still growing, including the one we played earlier in the first hour, Catherine Paradise, who played a clip of hers, and she said she fell away from her faith, but that the pilgrimage really brought her back. We're going to play all of these interviews in their entirety next week for a full hour of programming, talking about what pilgrimage is and whatnot. But I wanted to end the week for you, kind of give you a flavor of what people experience and how prayer impacts each of us, but each of us differently. As I mentioned earlier, this is Megan. She's a young woman. She was on our trip, and she had a profound connection with St. Anthony prior to the pilgrimage, and just wanted to share how she was so excited to make sure that she was going to pray at the tomb of St. Anthony in Padua. Here we go.
This is really a full circle moment for me. I moved to Los Angeles in 2006 from Baltimore, Maryland, and my cousin had lived out there. And I had a job lined up. I was supposed to work at a company called Wire Image doing photo editing. And my job fell through. I had no idea what I was going to do. My cousin was living in her one-bedroom apartment with her ex-boyfriend, and I was sleeping on her couch from IKEA. And every night, it was a really tiny couch, I would toss and turn, and one night I fell out the back because the backing was made out of cardboard. And I just woke up and I was crying, and I'm like, what did I do? I moved 3,000 miles away from everything I knew. And my mom had mailed me a packet, and it's probably 2 in the morning, and I open it up and I'm crying on this couch, and there was all these novenas stuffed in it. And one of the novenas that was in the envelope was St. Anthony. There's also a St. Jude novena in here, but it was the St. Anthony. And I flipped it over and it said, St. Anthony, Saint of Miracles. And I was like, I need a miracle. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm going to do for work. And I'll admit I kind of had an attitude. And I was like, all right, if you're the Saint of Miracles, show me. And I'll read the prayer at the end, because I think it would be nice for all of us to say our intention. But I remember I had moved out for modeling and acting, and I used to love soap operas, and particularly this one soap opera called Passions. And I was like, all right, St. Anthony, I want a miracle. I want to be on a soap opera, and I want to do a scene with Fox Crane, who is this famous actor now called his name's Justin Hartley. And then said my prayer, went to bed, and the next day my cousin was like, why don't you do background work? So I signed up to do background work. It's when they put you in shows and you don't talk. So anyway, I ended up booking this job, and 2 days later I find myself on set, and I'm a stand-in, and they brought in a guest actor, and I looked, and Justin Hartley came walking through the door, and I was like, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, what is this prayer? And I remember sitting with the hair and makeup artist, and I was like, have you ever heard of St. Anthony? And she's like, who? And I'm telling her about this prayer and how I prayed to have a scene, and even though I didn't have a scene, we were just sitting, and I didn't have any words or anything, but the fact that this actor came walking in, St. Anthony got my attention. And I started praying to this saint every day. And the graces and the blessings that have been brought into my life are miraculous. I would meet the kindest, loving people, and they would offer me work. And then I would pray, and I would follow, and I would get offered a job. I've been freelancing and working for myself for the past 19 years of my life. And I always, give God all the glory, but St. Anthony has really came through for me. And to be here where he's buried, and to be, it's a miracle. And I remember praying to him, it was probably 2015. I was like, I don't know where Padua is. I was like, but you'll get me there one day. And now here I am. And standing here. But yeah, I mean, I could go on, but that was the moment that really grabbed my attention. He was like, all right, you want a miracle? I'll show you one. But yeah, it's been a journey, and whenever I feel lost, I just always have had faith, and things have always just popped up in my life, especially with my career. And I share with some of you guys, I've been fit modeling for 18 years and then 13 years working for myself. And it's all through God's grace and the intercession of St. Anthony. And whenever, like, if I lose a client, there's always a calmness where I know, like, something will come through. And when I've met people in my life that have been so generous in helping me, I'm like, what can I do? What can I do? How can I repay you? And they're always like, just give back. And that's something that's always stuck with me too. So, and if is it okay if I read the? Okay. So, it says St. Anthony, Saint of Miracles. And then when I get to the part where it says mention your request here, I'll just take a few seconds of silence so we can all put our intentions on our heart. So in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. O holy St. Anthony, reach down from heaven and take hold of my hand. Assure me that I am not alone. You are known to possess miraculous powers and to be ever ready to speak for those in trouble. Loving and gentle St. Anthony, reach down from heaven, I implore you, and assist me in my hour of need. Obtain for me Dear St. Anthony, reach down from heaven and guide me with thy strength. Plead for me and my needs, and teach me to be humbly thankful as you were for all the bountiful blessings I am to receive. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
She always, thanks to her mom, who sent her a box of novenas, including the Holy Card from St. Anthony, had a connection with St. Anthony after he answered what she considered to be, and it certainly sounded like, a miraculous prayer request that she had. This is what happens on pilgrimage, and I love what she said is, I don't know where Padua is, but you'll get me there someday. And there she was, standing up in the chapel of this immense church dedicated to the amazing Franciscan St. Anthony of Padua. And she was just laughing because she said, I don't know where it is, but you'll get me there one day. And again, there she was. And to share that with us on pilgrimage, what it meant to her to be there at St. Anthony's tomb, to pray there in this magnificent, massive church that is just mind-boggling. That was my first time to Padua, and we only had a day there, actually an afternoon. And I said to my husband, Deacon Dom, when we got back, I said, we have to go to Padua. It's only about 4 hours from where we reside in central Italy. A little background about St. Anthony. He was born in 1195, 13 years after St. Francis in Lisbon, which is now known as Portugal. Given the baptismal name of Fernando, his parents, Martin and Mary, belonged to one of the most prominent families of the city. At the age of 15, he entered the religious order of St. Augustine. His monastery life was hardly peaceful, but he went on to eventually become a Franciscan. It took a magical turn, I wouldn't say magical, a mystical turn, when he was introduced to the Franciscans and was sent to Padua by St. Francis. And the rest, as we say in is history. St. Anthony of Padua, pray for us. We'll be right back. This is a beautiful event, and I think it's something you might want to consider attending. If you just heard the last segment, we were talking about pilgrimage, and I shared a testimony from one of the women from our Wine and Shrine pilgrimage, Women in New Evangelization, and how she was so moved when she walked into the Church of St. Anthony in Padua, Italy. And this is what happens when you go on pilgrimage, and whether you're going there to maybe just be on a retreat or just to experience these different shrines, it's a great place to get closer to the Lord, Our Lady, and all the saints. And that's what we're going to talk about, especially encouraging the laity, which is what we do on pilgrimage. And this really is a pilgrimage. On the phone with us, the Most Reverend Thomas J. Olmsted, Bishop Emeritus of the Diocese of Phoenix, and Christofer Pereyra. He's the CEO of Tepeyac Leadership. And we're going to talk about an upcoming event championing the role of a lady around the world. Thank you both for being here. Bishop Olmsted, it is so good to talk to you again. You've always been so kind to me and so supportive of my ministry. How did you get connected with Tepeyac leadership? And thanks for joining us.
Well, it happened by getting to know Christofer Pereyra and talking together about how the church needed to be very much more engaged with lay people, and especially here with those who were Spanish-speaking or of Hispanic culture, because our population is growing in that way. But really, all of our younger generation, in a particular way, we thought we needed to have their active participation and also leadership from among them in the church today.
That's a great idea. Christofer, lay out the details for us in terms of how people can get information and where and when this beautiful event is taking place, and if there's a link you can provide for us. And thanks for joining us.
Sure. But I was just thinking about the question you posted to Bishop. Good morning, Bishop.
Good morning, Christofer.
We were blessed to get connected with him, having all the way around. So very briefly, at the Diocese of Phoenix, when Bishop was the main bishop there, he launched a leadership program that I had the honor of executing his vision into it. And 8 years ago, we did this. And then the program grew to the point that we took it out of the diocese to share it with the rest of the church. And it's got the vision, we have the vision of forming lay Catholic leaders for civil society, for the world, so that they can sit at every table where decisions are made. So we've been doing this for 8 years, a leadership program. We call it Tepeyac Leadership. 3 years ago, we thought we'd add to what we're doing with an annual conference for the graduates of our program, but also open to all Catholic, particularly professionals who want to sharpen their leadership skills and grow in their relationship with Christ. We did it at Christ Cathedral in Orange County for the first 2 years, and this year we're very excited to take the conference for the first time to the Basilica of Guadalupe. So it's a beautiful experience because it's not just a conference now, it's a pilgrimage all into one experience.
And so when is it, Christofer, before we get back to the bishop, and how can people get information?
So people can sign up for it at thlconference.org. So THL as in the hour of the laity, thlconference.org. The dates are November 6th to the 8th, and everything is on the website.
And who are some of the speakers? I know you're going to be speaking, and of course, His Excellency Bishop Olmsted, but Christofer, who else is in the lineup?
That's right. I should have put this in front of me. We have a terrific lineup of speakers. What we try to do is, rather than focus on, as you know, in the Catholic world, we have such an amazing speaking circuit, right? But we work things sort of backwards in terms of the speakers that we invite to the conference. First, we think about the topics that we want to feature, and then we figure out who might be the best person to give a talk or presentation on this. We have coming up Catherine Jean Lopez, Tim Flanagan, Joseph Valentic, Dara Pereira, Rafael Testay, some of the people, Jose Pulido, Larry Layton. These are Catholic professionals, Blake Wells, from different areas of expertise, from all over the country, even outside the United States. We have a gentleman coming from Spain, for example, Rafael Monjo Sacristan, and Luis Fernando Calvo comes from Costa Rica. These are Catholic professionals who have terrific formation, but most of them are not dedicated to do lay ministry. They're not working in the parish or in the diocese. They are lawyers and accountants, and they're out in the world as leaders, lay Catholic leaders in civil society. They have the formation, and they come and tell us, they come to our event to tell us what it looks like in practice to be a lay Catholic leader in the world.
That's beautiful. And Bishop Olmsted, do you think that Catholics, that the lay Catholics need to understand, and I think this is the purpose for this gathering and this organization, to understand the impact they can have, and not necessarily in, quote unquote, a religious role?
Yes, that's what we need to. I think many do, but I think others need to be reminded of that, because often, they come to some conference or something and they get really fired up and they want to get involved. So they go back and they say, oh, I'll volunteer to be a lector or serve as an usher or help Father in his work. But that's not the primary witness we need. What we need is that they go back and they're a lawyer, and among their peers, that's where they really live their faith. Whatever their profession is, wherever God has placed them, that's the witness that's most important if we're going to be successfully evangelizing the culture today.
Yeah, and I think it's so important because while some of us, for example, you know my background, Bishop, you've known me for a long time. Yeah. I was in the secular media for 20 years, and I thought even after my reversion that is where God was going to keep me, but things changed. And so I think as long as we're open to what the Lord wants us to do. I mean, at first I wasn't. I really struggled with it. But then I realized, okay, he was going to take my gifts and my experience of the secular media and bring it into the Catholic world. But there are many people, for example, Catherine Jean Lopez, she's a friend of mine. She works in the secular media. She's a great writer and a great speaker, and she's thriving in that area. So I think it's understanding, okay, I don't have to be, it doesn't mean that we're not active in the church and helping out, but God may have a very special role for us in secular society, and that's why this is so important. Christofer, how's registration going right now?
It's going well. You know, for the first two conferences, we brought together 250 people from all over the country. This is the first time we're asking our audience, our community of Catholic leaders, Catholic professionals, to travel outside the United States. So we expect a smaller group, and as you know, it's just human nature. Everybody registers at the very last minute, so we're getting more registrations, and so it's still hard to know, but it's going to be probably a little shorter, smaller than the prior groups.
Yeah, but I think, though, you know, that's just a Catholic trait. We show up late right before Mass begins, or we register at the last minute for things. I don't know what it is about we Catholics. But again, Christofer, before we take a quick break, give us a website for more information.
Yes, THL, as in the Hour of the Laity, THL Conference.org.
All right, and is there a deadline as to when they should be registering?
There really isn't a deadline. The event is November 6th through the 8th. However, it's not practical. At some point, it's not practical anymore. You got to travel to Mexico City, which is a very, very easy thing to do. A lot of Americans have never been to Mexico, but it's just like going to LA or
right.
Houston.
It's very close. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, and what a beautiful place to have it. We'll talk more with the Most Reverend Thomas J. Olmsted, Bishop Emeritus of Phoenix, and Christofer Pereyra, the CEO of Tepeyac Leadership, on this beautiful conference, championing the role of the laity around the world, taking place in early November. You have a month to register, and it's taking place at Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City. We'll be right back. "38 minutes past the hour on a Friday." Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you and appreciate our guests, the Most Reverend Thomas J. Olmsted, Bishop Emeritus of the Diocese of Phoenix, and Christofer Pereyra, who's the CEO of Championing the Role of Laity around the world. And we're talking about this beautiful conference coming up in about a month in Mexico City. And God's timing, it just always amazes me. I shouldn't be amazed because he's God and I am not. That is so true. But what is amazing about the timing of the interview is that I just returned from my own pilgrimage that I lead with a friend of mine, Kelly Walquist, and Women in the New Evangelization. And I know personally, having done pilgrimages for the past 20 plus years, the impact that they have on people. And what we're talking about this morning in terms of the upcoming event in Mexico City, and Christofer, you and I were chatting about this during the break, this is a pilgrimage because what you're doing is you're going purposely to get closer to the Lord and to really learn how to submit more directly to his will. And this is for people in the secular world to say, I have a role to play. God has a vocation for me. And this is a different type of pilgrimage, correct?
Yes, I would say, you know, it's hard for me to say it, but I believe it is accurate to say that for people that have been thinking about visiting the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe, they will not find another opportunity to experience it this way, because this is a pilgrimage, while at the same time has all the elements of a conference with the formation, the fellowship, and the networking that comes from a Catholic conference for Catholic professionals.
Yeah, and again, the lineup of speakers is fantastic. You can just go to thlconference.org. Again, thlconference.org. This beautiful event is taking place, as we mentioned, in Mexico City, November 6th through the 8th. It's a Catholic Leadership Conference. And Bishop, what do you think in terms of, if people are listening, why they should think about attending? Maybe there's someone in the secular world who's not feeling that they're very fruitful or wondering what God has in store for them. What would you say about attending this event?
Well, I think it often can be an inspiration to meet someone else who's in your same profession or is involved in certain boards, and how they've been able to, even maybe to their own surprise, to have an impact on others to come to a stronger witness to Christ where they are, and maybe just to come to a closer union with Christ there, because you'll meet others who are striving to live their faith well, and as they meet them, as they have conversations with them, they begin to realize, oh, I could do even more here, or I should think about that board, things like that. So I think it helps expand your notion of how Christ has called you to witness to the gospel.
One of the points you made, Your Excellency, when we were chatting during the break, is that people may not be thinking of serving, let's say, on a school board or maybe on the city council or some way they can have a positive Catholic influence in the world, but that would be a great place for them to consider, right?
Yes, that's one of the things I learned early on as a bishop, is that if you can get people involved in a school board, that involves them thinking about youth, the future, maybe their own children or others. That's a really important way. And then from that, you begin to gain confidence that serving on boards can make a difference in companies as well as in school boards and other community boards.
Christofer, I'm going to read right from the website. And again, the website for the conference is thlconference.org. What is unique about the Hour of the Laity, referring to this event? All the experts, panelists, and keynotes introduced are lay people. The Hour of the Laity puts only Catholic lay leaders who are making an impact in front of attendees as examples of authentic lay Catholic leadership. We do not showcase apologists, theologians, or ministry leaders. Rather, we learn from lay Catholic leaders in civil society. Our speakers will show lay people why and how our true calling is to be ambassadors of Christ in the world. I really like the way you've worded this. This is, I think, very understandable on this website.
Thank you. And we just want to say we love apologists and theologians.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just not what we do.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not what we do. We think that for the longest time, lay Catholics have had the wrong idea of what it means to be a lay Catholic leader in the world. And they often compare that or connected it to serving at the parish, which we should, as you said, absolutely be doing. But our true field of mission as laity, really the authentic character of the lay vocation, is the world. And so an important aspect of what we do, Bishop Olmsted has mentioned it, is board service. We train, encourage, and really send off professionals, Catholic professionals, to serve on boards, because we are convinced that behind every human institution, be it a hospital, university, or business, there's a group of people that come together on a regular basis to chart the direction of the organization, to enact policy. And we need more Catholics sitting at those tables where decisions are made.
Mm. And Christofer, I know this involves, speaking of pilgrimage, this involves a visit to Our Lady of Guadalupe and Tepeyac Hill, correct?
Absolutely. We're going to spend a lot of time with Mother Mary in Mexico City.
That's great. I've never been there. It's on my bucket list. I've been all over the world, and especially spending so much time in Italy. But I've heard so many amazing stories about people who have, even not people of faith, but just out of curiosity, come to encounter Our Lady of Guadalupe and the Tilma, and their lives are changed. Your Excellency, what else would you like people to know about what the Church means when she's talking about the Hour of the Laity?
Well, I think we really want people to understand what was some of the main focus of the Second Vatican Council, the holiness that's everybody's vocation, and the fact that the laity are 99% of the church. And so if the church is really going to be alive and be able to convince others of its the great gift that it is from Christ, then our lay people have to be conscious of just living their faith authentically.
Do you think people are becoming more aware of that right now, given there seems to be a switch, maybe not, I wouldn't go as far as to say a paradigm shift, but I think people are not afraid to express their faith as they may have been a few years ago. What do you think, Your Excellency?
Yeah, I think that's true for a number of them. There's still quite a large number who are really good people, and they really live their faith on Sundays and in their own families, and that's a primary beginning of doing so. But often they haven't thought about how their place, their profession, and in their work and in boards they serve on, how that is also a real great opportunity, and one where we need the voice often in order so that some moral issues don't get totally overlooked.
Right.
And so that the opportunity to bring Christ into the conversation can happen.
And Christofer, and by the way, if you're just joining us, 46 minutes past the hour on a Friday morning edition of Catholic Connection, we're chatting with Most Reverend Thomas J. Olmsted, the Bishop Emeritus of the Diocese of Phoenix, and Christofer Pereyra, CEO of course, this beautiful organization that champions the role of laity around the world. Do you think there's still kind of like a disconnect in thinking, well, if I'm a Catholic in the world, does that mean I have to stand up in the lunchroom, the cafeteria, at the water cooler and say the rosary and read the gospel, or, go around with holy water?
Yes.
Understanding what that means, right?
We sometimes we equate being a Catholic at the office to creating a shrine in our desk, right? Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do with that. Really, people should know that we are Catholic. We're the Christian in the office simply by the way we conduct ourselves, right? I think most people understand that first level of witness. People understand, I should be giving a good example at work, wherever I am. It is that next level. We definitely talk about the first level, but the next level is where we spend a lot of time in our conversations, in our apostolate, which is that we should be intentionally seeking out opportunities of advancement. People think, what do you mean? I should be a humble person. No, if your heart is in the right place and you're doing everything to give God the glory, you should absolutely looking up to moving upward in your professional career so that you can become a person of influence. Why do you want to be a person of influence? So that you can influence others with the values of the gospel.
Right. Well, Your Excellency, something that, and you know this because you've heard me speak and I've given my testimony at women's conferences, and when you were the Bishop of the Diocese of Phoenix, you're now retired. But one of the things that brought me back to the Catholic Church was using my journalistic skills and reading about how everything the Church teaches makes sense, and all the scripture verses make sense. Everything the Church does is, as Pope Leo has been talking extensively recently in the last couple of weeks, especially about the dignity of the human person. And all of the teachings of the Church has so much to give us, whether it be learning how to work with each other in the workplace, learning about faith, social justice, the poor, just morality in general. The teachings of the Church make the most sense when it comes to living out and embracing the natural law. And we don't have to be afraid of it, because if something is good that God gives us, it's not just good for Catholics. Yes, we're the universal church, but it's good for everyone because we are the universal church and the teachings are universal, correct?
Yes, very true. I also like Dorothy Day said, or it was said about Dorothy Day, she lived as though the truth were true.
Mm.
I think that's part of what we're looking at here. You live, in Christ. As you grow in a gratitude for that, that's the way you live. As it is true. You're confident that, wow, this is true, and many people don't know it yet, or have just a little tiny glimpse of it, but it needs to be brought more to the fore.
Yeah, and Christofer, I imagine that you're tying in a lot of the Church's teaching on the laity as well at this event, right?
Absolutely. We draw significantly from the Second Vatican Council for what we do and for Catholic social doctrine. But in this year's conference, we are focusing in a very special way in Pope Leo. And so we actually have given the conference in Illo Uno Unum. The Pope's motto has become the theme for this year's conference, because we really want to pay attention to what he's saying. And if you look at the program, we're talking about Catholic social doctrine, this new paradigm that we find ourselves in with artificial intelligence. These are going to be some of the discussions that are going to take place at the conference.
Yeah, and this is why it's to have people of moral character to be involved and to be at the helm of leadership. I mean, come on, in the last couple of years, we've seen so many issues with people who have just basically served themselves or served their own agendas, and we've seen the fallout from that. So we're talking about this beautiful event the Catholic Leadership Conference that's coming up in Mexico City. Can you imagine? Talk about a pilgrimage, November 6th through the 8th. You can get tickets at thlconference.org. Again, thlconference.org. And it's an opportunity not only to visit the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe, of course, go to Tepeyac Hill, learn all about the tilma, pray there, but also to say, okay, am I doing what God wants me to do? And how am I applying the gifts that he gave me in the real world? Doesn't mean you can't be involved in your parish, doesn't mean you can't help out, doesn't mean you can't volunteer with another Catholic organization. But God has placed all of us in particular areas for a particular reason. And what a great way to hear from those who are on the front lines doing this very thing. Again, this is coming up November 6th through the 8th. You can still get tickets. It's in Mexico City. Mexico City is a short plane ride from most places in the United States. Very easy to get to. So check it out online, thlconference.org. Real fast, gentlemen, we have about a minute left. Christofer, any last comments before we let you go?
Visit the website. Everything's there. Thank you so much, Teresa.
You're welcome. Thank you for doing this. Your Excellency, I'll let you have the last word.
Okay. I think this conference is built on the Second Vatican Council, especially Lumen Gentium, where we're called to be a light to the world. And often where the light is most needed is where God's already placed us, in the place of our work, in our family, and in our community, and in the boards or other community organizations that we have.
Oh, beautiful.
Yes.
So good to talk to both of you. And Bishop Olmsted, so nice to chat with you. And quickly, I wanted to just mention, as a side note, not to get off topic as we wrap up the segment, but a priest that you ordained, Father Frankie Cicero, is leading a pilgrimage that Deacon Dom and I are doing next week. And I know he thinks the world of you, so I'll make sure that I told him we had an interview today. Go to THL. Yeah, isn't that great? THLconference.org. This is a beautiful event. You need to check it out. Again, THLconference.org. We'll be right back. It was so good to catch up with Bishop Olmsted. He's always been such a supporter of mine. I have such great respect for him. And so nice to catch up with Christofer as well and talk about this wonderful conference that's coming up in November that you need to check out. The Hour of the Lady, coming up at Our Lady of Guadalupe. Can you imagine, in Mexico City? All right, coming up on a Monday, excited to bring back, by popular demand, my friend Anthony DeStefano, noted speaker and best-selling author. His new book for children, All Hallows Eve, is taking off, selling like hotcakes, as the old saying goes, and doing really well. And the reason I want to bring Anthony on again is twofold. Firstly, being that we are in the month of October, and while it is a beautiful, powerful month, of course, it's a month of pro-life, it's a month of the Rosary, the month of Our Lady, all those wonderful things. We do have a world out there that is pushing back against us. And so how great is it when we have resources that can help us stand up, as we learned in the gospel today, right? Stand up against the enemy. And this book by Anthony is so well written, beautifully illustrated, and has a powerful message about the true roots of Halloween. One of the things I love about living in Italy is they don't push the seasons. They don't push all this stuff. And Halloween is not a big deal here, but the faith still is, despite, yes, there are many people that are fallen away. But All Saints' Day is a much bigger deal than Halloween. And they don't have all the Halloween craziness and all the ghouls and goblins, and I hope it stays that way. But Anthony joins us on a Monday, still working on a couple other things, because we always keep up and keep you connected, hence the name of the program. Have a great weekend, God willing. Talk to you on a Monday. Ciao, ciao.